At a time when the United Nations faces war, division, and serious questions about its own authority, the race for the next Secretary General is not only about leadership, it's about the future of multilateralism itself. On Power, we continue our conversations with candidates for this global role. My guest today is María Fernanda Espinosa, candidate for the next UN Secretary General, former President of the UN General Assembly, and former Foreign Minister and Defense Minister of Ecuador. Madam Espinosa, you are so welcome to Power.
I am delighted to be here with you. New moment for this program on Power.
Thank you for being with us. And Madam Espinosa, actually, you have recently said that the United Nations must recover its authority as a mediator, especially in conflict prevention. So let me start with that idea. If you become Secretary General, what kind of leadership would the world see?
Well, I think that the world would see a Secretary General who is an honest broker, who is impartial, present, who is persistent, someone willing to engage early, quietly, seriously, before crises spiral out of control. And that's what we are seeing recently, unfortunately. So today we're witnessing a very high number of active conflicts, the highest number since 1946, more than 60 conflicts across over 35 countries. And at the same time, trust in international institutions is declining, as you very well said. So this is not a moment for speeches alone. It is a moment for results. It is a moment for impact. So I believe that the UN does not need a larger organization. It needs a more effective one. No, every year the UN reaches more than 140 million people affected by crisis and supports hundreds of millions through development, through humanitarian and peace operations. So the challenge is not whether the UN matters. The challenge is whether it can deliver quickly, coherently, and credibly. Your question is about basically the issue of prevention and how important it is to prevent. No, and I think that the UN should have a better infrastructure to prevent conflicts, to have early warning systems, build in mechanisms and high-level teams for red flags, so the Secretary General can act early, can operate as this conflict preventer, as a peacemaker, but before the conflicts are before us. It is not possible that in the 21st century, we have more than, as mentioned, more than 60 active conflicts around the world. So we need to be better at preventing.
Sure, but when we speak about leadership, I believe there is a question that the United Nations can no longer, let's say, avoid. There has never been a woman Secretary General of the United Nations, right? So, of course, we do know that the leadership is not only about the gender, but would choosing a woman now be mainly symbolic, or could it also change the way of the UN thinks about human security or protection of civilians, etc.?
Well, I think it would be a historically significant issue to have the first woman Secretary General in 80 years of history of the organization. But this is not simply about symbolism. It is about effectiveness. It is about legitimacy, better decision-making at a time of a global crisis. So the UN cannot speak credibly about inclusion, about equality, about human dignity, while half of humanity has never been represented in its highest office. No, but beyond representation, women often bring different perspectives to prevention, to mediation, to human security and civilian protection, as you mentioned. Areas where the international system is under strain today because of lack of resources, but also because of lack of impact. So I have to say that throughout my career, I have worked to advance women's rights and equality, not as a slogan, no, sometimes, but beyond that, as a public policy. As a Minister of Defense, for example, I implemented affirmative action policies for women in the armed forces. and a strict zero tolerance policy against violence and harassment, but also promoting women in the military at the highest levels. As president of the General Assembly, I built a leadership team based on not only on gender balance, but also on regional representation, because I strongly believe that diversity of backgrounds, a diversity of experience really improves institutions and strengthens decision making. So at the end of the day, this is a governance, wise decisions. And you said it is not only about a symbolic or historic justice. It is about the quality and it is about the merit. Sometimes it is not because I am a woman, but because I am the right woman to lead the organization in the future.
I believe this also connects us to one of your strongest, let's say, arguments that the world must act earlier before crises become disasters, become wars. So you have argued also that the international system must move from reaction to prevention.
Well, as you very well mentioned, moving from reaction to prevention means acting earlier, listening to early warning signs, investing in diplomacy, supporting local and regional mediation efforts that are ongoing, and addressing, of course, the root causes of instability before they become armed conflicts or humanitarian disasters as we are seeing today. So prevention is difficult. It's not an easy issue to do, precisely because we don't see it when it's working. And so the tragedy is that successful prevention is invisible. And when a war does not happen, there is no headline in the news. And you know that perhaps better than anyone. When mediation works quietly, there is no dramatic moment, I have to say. But when prevention fails, the human consequences are catastrophic. And of course, much more expensive in terms of human lives, in terms of resources, and in terms of human suffering. If you look at recent numbers, for example, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is showing that every dollar invested in prevention can save from $26 to $103 in future conflict-related costs. So it makes economic sense, it makes human sense, it also improves the legitimacy and the authority of the multilateral system and the United Nations. The UN prevention is one of the most repeated words. Everybody speaks about prevention, but one of the least operationalized. It is not working in reality, it's not deployed. And what we are good at, we wait until violence exploits to act. And millions of people are displaced before mobilizing serious political attention. So this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest weaknesses of the international system. So there is an issue of prioritizing, investing, creating the right infrastructure to act and act on time. In the world of today, we see that more than 300 million people require humanitarian assistance, and over 120 million people are displaced worldwide as we speak. So the economic impact of violence now exceeds $19 trillion annually, $19 trillion. So if we only think that we need $5 trillion to achieve all the sustainable development goals, to make sure that all people live with dignity around the world, it really pays off to prevent, to act early, and to arrive to conflicts before they exploit and they rise sometimes. So I think the best infrastructure that we can put in place in the UN to comply with its mandate, it's a very robust prevention infrastructure.
Then, Madam Espinosa, let me bring your central idea of the prevention closer to our region. I mean, the South Caucasus has often been viewed, let's say, through the lenses of conflict, even geopolitical rivalry. But today, the region is also going through the reconstruction, new connectivity projects, peace process. So what should the international community do to support the South Caucasus as a region of cooperation rather than permanent competition?
Well, I think that the international community must recognize that the future of the South Caucasus should not be defined by its past conflicts, but rather to be seen as a region with enormous strategic importance and a bridge between regions, markets, energy networks, and cultures. Today, I think we have a real opportunity to move from a confrontation towards connectivity. That's what we're seeing. No reconstruction, opportunities for cooperation and investment. So sustainable peace, I think, strongly needs regional ownership first. No, the UN should act as an honest broker and as a trusted platform. No, helping sustain dialogue, supporting confidence building measures, creating space for cooperation where political trust is still fragile. No, and we have to also accept that. No, I believe, and I strongly believe, because I've been there. No, I've seen what development can do, what really sustaining peace can bring. So I think that the South Caucasus has the potential to evolve from a corridor of tension into a corridor of cooperation, connecting Europe, Asia, and the broader region through what really matters, no? Through trade, through energy, through transport, through human exchange. And I'm really very encouraged by what the region is trying to build, because choosing cooperation over confrontation requires really, and we have seen that, it requires real political courage and a deep commitment to the well-being of people. So I think that the South Caucasus is a region of hope, is a region of opportunity, and it is a region that can really leading by example of what building peace means.
And this peace and also opportunities also go through the diplomacy as well, but we do know that when official diplomacy, let's say, is limited or blocked, dialogue platforms are crucial. So as a member of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, you know the Global Baku Forum well. The question is, what makes these kind of platforms essential today? And can informal dialogues sometimes open doors that official diplomacy cannot?
Absolutely. I think that in today's geopolitical climate, formal diplomacy is often operating under enormous pressure. And I know that firsthand. No, polarization, mistrust, rigid political positions can really narrow the space for dialogue, particularly when we see highly sensitive international crises. No, this is why I believe that platforms like the Global Baku Forum are so valuable. They create opportunity and a space for conversations that are often difficult to have in more formal institutional settings. So I strongly believe that informal diplomacy, what we sometimes call the track 2 diplomacy, of course, it cannot replace official negotiations, but I really believe it can prepare the ground for them. It can reduce tensions, it can test ideas, build personal trust. It can identify areas of convergence before governments are ready sometimes to move publicly. No, and I have seen throughout my career how conversations between former leaders, diplomats, academics, civil society, regional actors, no, can open political space to trigger formal negotiations, no, and that's, I think, extremely valuable. The Baku Forum, I have been a witness of that for several years, but I strongly believe it's reconnect diplomacy with dialogue. It reconnects reflection with human engagement. No, and it reminds us that diplomacy is not only about official statements and negotiation. It is about listening, deep listening, understanding different perspectives, rebuilding confidence step by step. And it is also about intercultural dialogue. And all of this is in full in full deployment at the Baku Forum every year. And I am very honored and humbled to say that I have been part of the Baku Forum for several years now.
And Madam Espinosa, let me end by returning to the central, let's say, theme of our conversation, I mean, prevention. So looking 5 to 10 years ahead, will the world learn to prevent crisis earlier?
I have to say I'm a pragmatic optimist, no? And I believe that the world will gradually move towards prevention, not because it's idealistic, no, but I think that the current model has become politically, financially, and humanly unsustainable. No, today the international system spends vastly more in responding to crises than preventing them. And humanitarian needs are rising. We mentioned that before. Displacement is reaching record levels. Development financing is under pressure. And even the UN system is under pressure right now and facing serious financial constraints. So simply reacting after catastrophe strikes is really not longer viable. So, but I believe that we are entering a period of necessary transformation. For example, the Pact of the Future, the UNAID reform process, the advances on digital technology, artificial intelligence, early warning systems. I think that these create really opportunities to modernize how the international community anticipates and responds to risks. So you ask about the next 10 years, no? And how I see is that we will judge the United Nations in 10 years not only by how it responded to emergencies, but by how many crises it helped prevent before they escalated into human tragedy, in a way. No, in the end, the United Nations must be judged not by the number of meetings it convenes, the number of resolutions it adopts, but by how many lives it improves, how effectively it prevents and helps prevent conflicts and sustain peace and stability, and ensure that people, us humans, the human community, it can live with dignity and free from fear and free from want. And for that, a change in leadership, I think it's a great opportunity.
Madam Espinosa, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being with us.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.